Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for one of our fantastic virtual sessions. Today, we are speaking about all things alternative finance careers. If you were really wondering, like, what is the breadth and depth of careers in finance? I've heard a lot about investment banking, but I'm not really sure it's the best fit for me. This is a great opportunity to learn from some fantastic women leaders who have asked themselves the same questions and have also kind of blazed their own path forward. We're really thrilled to have four fantastic folks here today to have this really in-depth and meaningful conversation. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I do introduce myself to you all. My name is Libby Davis. I'm an MBA program manager here at Forte. You may have gotten emails from our team. If this is the first time I'm meeting you, I'm very thrilled that you're joining us today for this conversation. And hopefully, this will be the first of many interactions that you have with Forte and the MBA team throughout your business school experience. So let's get started. We've kind of talked a little bit about what our goals of the conversation are today, to just learn about all the different fantastic and amazing opportunities in finance, especially for women leaders. I mentioned we have a pretty great panel today with four fantastic folks who are going to share kind of how they found their path in finance, the questions that they asked themselves, and kind of how the MBA played a role in that decision-making process. So I'm going to start by having our panelists introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Drishti Basi. Drishti is joining us with an MBA from the University of Oxford, and she is currently a mobilization data and performance executive at the British International Investment. So, Drishti, I'm going to turn it over to you. We'd love to learn more about your career journey.
Perfect. Thanks, Libby. Hi everyone. I'm Drishti. It's great to be part of this panel. I, I just to introduce myself, I like to call myself an impact sector professional. I've done that for as long as I can remember, but now I'm specifically working in finance. Just a bit about myself. I'm originally from India, now based in London. I did my undergrad in management and I specialized in finance. So from the very beginning, I was sort of entrenched in the management and finance space. But my experience in my undergrad was sort of foundational for me because I got to work with a lot of micro businesses, social enterprises, build my knowledge on a lot of issues which were socio-economic, political back in India through certain student clubs and so on, which sort of built an early introduction for me on solving issues which just seemed important to me. So that was my undergrad. That was very early on in my life. But right after my undergrad, I moved into consulting. I worked at Bain and Company for over a year, and worked in deals across telecom, media, retail, consumer goods space. But after a quick year at consulting, I was convinced that these are not the problems that energize me, and I wanted to switch careers to work on issues that really, really do give me power. And so after a year of consulting, I moved to philanthropic investing and working with an organization called Dasra in India, where I worked for an extended period of time. I was solving issues in the urban sanitation space, policy and governance related problems. How do I channel philanthropic money in these issues most effectively? So my background is actually very focused on nonprofit program management and working very specifically on grassroots issues. But this experience convinced me of the power of capital and how large scale capital can create a lot of impact. And that's when I decided to do my MBA. And I chose Oxford because of its impact focus. And during my MBA degree, oh, not to mention, I became a Forte and a Laidlaw Fellow and a scholar, which really did help shape my experience at Oxford. But during my MBA, I interned with British International Investment, or BII, as we like to call it. And it's a little bit about BII. It is a development finance institution of the UK, so it's very much in the realm of development capital. Also, like the multilateral development banks, the World Bank and Africa Development Bank, Asian Development Bank. A lot of these banks are the ones which are focused in putting in patient capital and developmental capital in businesses that are impact focused in emerging markets. So for BII, that's specifically Asia and Africa. And interestingly, I am not an investment team member at BII. I found my niche in impact evaluation and impact measurement of the investments that we're making, which sort of helped me tie back my experience with working on nonprofits, but also learn more about how to make large scale institutional capital investments and sort of build my career in the space while keeping very close to my skill set of working with organizations and businesses on their impact specific outcomes. But yeah, that's a bit about me. Excited to speak to everyone else.
Thank you, GHT. It's going to be I know it's going to be a great conversation. I can't wait to hear more. And I just think all of you have such fantastic career journeys that this is going to be really great. So next, I'm excited to introduce all of you to Christine Beasy. Christine is founder and CEO at Untangle Money, which I can't wait to hear more about. She also comes to us with an MBA from Western University or Ivy Business School. So Christine, welcome. We'd love to hear more about you. Feel free to take it over.
Yes, thank you so much. I've I've had several careers by now, just because I'm a little older than a lot of the people here. But I started as a national level figure skater and really wasn't sure I'd ever go back to school. But I did pairs figure skating, so I wasn't scared to get thrown great distances. And then I graduated with a degree in engineering physics from a university in Canada called Queen's University. It's a leading engineering school. Um, and I ended up in the oil and gas industry simply because the industry that my field went into kind of imploded right before we graduated. So that was where the jobs were. And I could design most of the different vessels and pipes and pumps in a gas processing plant. Some pretty great skills, but what I didn't understand and where I didn't know where to get started was what to do with money. And I went to the bank and I had a very unsatisfying conversation with a gentleman who worked there. And sadly, I did not invest my money that day. And there are a lot of things that I am insecure about, but being able to understand concepts is not one of those things. And so because this conversation was unsatisfying and because I wasn't really that keen to be an engineer in oil and gas, I do care about impact and I do care about the environment and didn't feel like a good alignment. I thought, well, maybe I could learn more about money. And so I went and did my MBA and I chose Ivy. It's arguably one of the main leading business schools in Canada. It was 1 year program, which I wanted in case I wanted to come back to the business I had in oil and gas. I knew it was very hard to break into the finance industry and that the chances were low. Ivy also tended to have finance and consulting streams. So I knew it was one of the schools that the banks tended to hire from. So that was why I selected Ivy. And I got in. I made it into RBC, which is Canada's largest bank, and they had a rotational program. So I worked on the trading floor in both trading and sales roles. That was fascinating. Then I landed in the UK looking at oil and gas stocks as an analyst, a stock analyst there in equity research. And later, when we came back to Canada, I became a portfolio manager at a value investing fund. And then taking it back really full circle, a friend from engineering who graduated top of our class came to me and said, my relationship is not working out. I don't know if I can afford to leave and I don't know how to figure it out. Can you help me? And I thought back to the person I was in my 20s, early 20s, when I too had money and didn't really know what to do with it. And I didn't want people to have to spend 5 to 15 years in the finance industry to paint themselves a clear picture. And so I founded Untangle Money. We really want to take women specifically from 0 to 1, meaning we want to take them from feeling like they don't know where to get started with their money to feeling like they can confidently invest with the finance industry. And that's what I've been working on. And it's wonderful to feel like the job I'm doing is contributing to a positive future in the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. I can't wait to hear more. It's going to be great. It's going to be great to hear. All right, so next, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Ria Mahato. Ria is a senior business manager for payments at Amazon and comes to us with an MBA from Indiana University, the Kelley School of Business. Ria, welcome. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey as we kick off this panel.
Thank you, Libby. Hello, everyone. My name is Ria Mahato, and as Libby mentioned, I graduated from the MBA program at the Kelley School of Business uh, in 2016. I also have an undergraduate degree in computer science engineering from India. Speaking of my MBA journey, I would say, while I learned the academic business principles, the majority of my learning of, strategic thinking and problem solving came from the co-curricular activities. So I did extensive student consulting engagements with nonprofits and small businesses, and also student government leadership and exchange programs. And I felt those were the experiences that gave me the most rounded learning. Not to mention building a lifelong network of friends who cheer you on your career journey. Work-wise, I have over 13 years of experience in various industries, and currently I work at Amazon. Uh, I lead the payment solutioning for new market expansions and M&A integrations. So what that entails is as Amazon companies grow their geographical footprint, I solve for their unique payment requirements, be it e-commerce, cloud computing, entertainment, consumer devices, healthcare, satellite internet, you name it. So there's a lot of variety in the type of industries, and each industry has the unique payment requirements for their vendors and their customers. And given the large scale, I work with banks from all over the world, and that lets me learn about new payment rails, faster payments, stable coins, etc., and also regulations. Talking about that, prior to Amazon, I worked with Capital One in their risk management and credit cards organization. That's where I built my foundational knowledge of credit lending, fraud detection, compliance risk, uh, underwriting, and I guess I've worked in different facets of financial services, if you will. And I'm happy today to get an opportunity to share my learnings and insights with you all. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Ria. I can't wait to hear more about that. This is just going to be a great panel. I'm really excited. And then last but certainly not least, we have Catherine joining us today. Catherine Mize Ariarte. She is the Vice President of Acteris Impact Investors and comes to us with an MBA from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Sloan School of Business. So Catherine, welcome. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks so much. I'm glad to be with everybody today. By way of background, I'm a little bit more non-traditional. So I went to the College of William and Mary for undergraduate, studied biology because that's what I was passionate about. And when I graduated, I wanted to make an impact. And at the time, it felt like Capitol Hill was the right way to do that. So I spent 4 years working for two different members of Congress on Capitol Hill, one of which was U.S. Senator Tim Scott, who was one of the authors of the Opportunity Zone legislation. He was also a member of the Banking Committee and very strongly interested in economic and social mobility in the United States. So after a couple of years of that, kind of felt like I wanted to go from thinking about legislating financial markets and opportunity to being a participant. So went back to business school at MIT, had a really great experience there. Initially, actually thought I was coming in really interested in venture capital and did a little bit of kind of initial diligence and realized that any VC firm that would hire me, I wouldn't want to work for. Coming in without a finance background, it was really, really important for me to use the MBA to transition into finance. So I did that by really exclusively focusing on investment banking recruiting. During my time at Sloan, I was really, really involved with the IB Club, helped to lead it the second year, and ended up getting 4 offers at investment banks. Ultimately spent 2 years at Goldman Sachs in the healthcare investment banking group. Had a really good experience there. I actually think the Goldman Healthcare Group is the best group on Wall Street for women. There were a number of female VPs and MDs. I was on a really cool IPO that was actually Goldman all females, and the whole C-suite of the company was all female. And it wasn't like their shtick. It was a really cool med tech company. That just happened to be what it was, but I have like a cool screenshot of the Zoom calls. So great experience there, but obviously really, really grueling. 90-hour weeks were not out of the norm. Knew I wanted to do impact, and I had a prior connection with the founder and CEO of Arcteris Impact Investors, so kind of a natural fit. So after 2 years, they asked me to come back. Started as a senior associate and have since been promoted to a vice president where I lead sort of private equity focused deals with a social impact bent. And I actually last summer closed my first deal where I was the deal lead from start to finish. So been a really fun place to be. I'm probably a little bit more in the traditional finance role in the sense that it's kind of private equity, but with the social impact lens. So happy to chat more.
Thanks, Catherine. And thanks to everyone for sharing a little bit about their career journeys. I know we're going to dive into everything right now with our kind of predetermined panel questions. Just to let everyone know here today, we do hope to have questions to take questions from the audience at the end. So if you have thoughts that come up as we're going through our conversation, feel free to put them in the Q&A component of the chat, and that's where I, as the moderator, will be looking for questions. And of course, hoping to get to that later on as well, so that we can have a full discussion and conversation with all of you. All right, so we're going to dive right in. The first question is actually, Catherine, we're going back to you. So I'd love to learn, when did you first realize that Wall Street wasn't kind of the only or best option for your path in finance? To what extent did your MBA kind of influence or redirect your career trajectory within the space?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take the second one first because I think for me it was really dramatic. My MBA was a huge turning point. Um, to the extent that like career services was like, I don't know, this is a big change. I mean, it had to be the focus of what I was doing first semester. The really great thing about, and kind of the terrible thing about investment banking, is that the recruiting process is really heavy in the first semester, but then it's done. So I had to be really, and for anybody who's in an MBA and for anybody who will start, one of the things you learn really quickly is your scarcest commodity is your time. At any given time, there's 3, 4, 5 interesting things you could be doing personally, professionally, socially. And so I had to be really intentional. MIT, and I think a lot of other business schools, had a really exciting kind of startup ecosystem, as well as sort of anything else you could imagine. So I had to be really focused and disciplined on getting into investment banking. And the reason for that is I think it's probably the best and only way, at least for me, where, I had used Excel like to make lists previously a few times, to get into finance. And it is a phenomenal training experience. They have actual training. You start a month early and there's training classes, but also it's very much an apprenticeship model in a way that my current job, unfortunately, just doesn't have the capacity to be. We're not an organization that has a ton of sort of like organizational capacity and people to train. So for me, the MBA was a complete pivot that was done very intentionally. And then in terms of, when did I decide that investment banking might not be the be all end all? I think I knew that going in. That's not a winning comment to make when you're recruiting, but I did know going in that it was probably not going to be my, 20-year plan. Um, I knew I wanted to be back in impact. And I would say healthcare also does feel impactful. Eventually, the hours become really challenging. It does get better as you go on, but the hours become really challenging. Moving to something on the buy side is obviously appealing. So with the 2-year mark, I felt like I'd learned a lot. I'd kind of done my time, and it was a good time to transition.
I appreciate too that you mentioned like uh, I felt like I had learned what I was going to learn, and the next adventure is where I will learn even more. So I like that your approach makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad that you know yourself so well, Catherine, that you knew why you were doing the MBA. You were so focused, and then you were focused on that next step, and then you were like, all right, time to move. So can't wait to hear more about that as well. Our next question is going to be for Christine. Christine, how did you evaluate risk when you were considering or that, your roles or shifts in your finance career? What were some early signs that you made the right choice of kind of moving off of that traditional track?
Yeah, and so I also had a lot of roles within my finance career. So there was a lot of decision making along the way. I think one of the things from the outside that it's hard to see is not all of those decisions are you in control of, and you're sort of the recipient of that decision, and your decision is more yes or no. And some often my answer was yes. As the rotational program, there was either a position there full time, or there more often than not there wasn't, and it was just a training role that they would continuously fill until there was an open seat. Think of it as musical chairs a little bit. And then, so some of them were out of my control and some of them were in my control. So, when I was a stock analyst, I had my first maternity leave and I came back onto a totally different industry line. I went from oil and gas, where I had a professional engineering degree and designation, to metals and mining, which sounds similar because it's resource based. But it was now I was a mom of a 1 year old and really trying to figure out that, and then trying to, ramp up with the insider knowledge that I think really makes you a good analyst. You have to know things, or I had a competitive advantage in oil and gas that I didn't feel I would replicate in metals and mining. And so when I look at risks, I'm kind of looking at three different pillars personally, and you can have more or less, but one of them is personal. What is it that I want to learn? What skill sets do I want to build out? What feeling do I want to have from this role? Lifestyle and life stage. Am I thinking about having a child in the future, and does that company offer maternity benefits? Which companies have better maternity benefits? Am I single, and do I really want to focus on, building up the skills? Investment banking, very similar to equity research in terms of a toolkit that, and similarly the MBA, you can really gain a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge in a short period of time in these different roles in finance. And then lastly, financial, are you paying off student debt? How comfortable are you with debt? How quickly do you want to pay it off? How much, uh, how much do these roles compensate you for the effort? And so those are sort of the three pillars that I look at. There's also a wonderful sort of over or up framework that you can think of. If I want to go from engineering to, I guess, entrepreneurship, and get an education in finance, am I moving into the into the industry vein pillar that I can move up through, or am I moving up so that I can move over later? And so I've always really liked that. Like, am I either getting closer to the ultimate skill set I want, or am I moving up so that maybe I command more power, or more seniority in that position? So keeping those things in mind have benefited me very well in looking at different positions and evaluating the risks.
And I appreciate that you can distill it down into these are my three pillars. This is the way I look at it, and that you focus your decision making using those kind of guiding posts. I think that makes a ton of sense. Um, and actually, for our next question, we are going to go back to Christine, and Drishti. So this is for both of y'all. We'll start with Drishti. So how would you compare the culture, the pace, and the impact of your role now compared to some of the more traditional finance environments that you both have been in, or other, the consulting work that you did, Drishti, as well? What about kind of personal fulfillment, if you all could speak to those? And Drishti, we'll start with you.
Yeah, of course. Again, haven't been in traditional finance environments before, but traditional corporate environments, yes. And so for me, I think the specific cultural difference has been just the focus on making sure the investments that we make as a development finance institution, which is governed sort of by a government, but also has an investment mandate, are also impactful at the same time. And our investments are also sort of additional. That is, this impact wouldn't have happened unless this sort of institutional capital was not present at the point of time in the business. And so I think alt investment careers, especially the ones that I'm working in as a development finance institute, these factors are equally, if not more important, to consider the financial viability of an investment. And that sort of helps you identify as a person within that specific vertical in the organization with the work that you're doing. Is it important enough? Are you being heard? Is there space for you to make an argument for and against an investment purely because of the impact mandate of an investment? So it sort of really permeates through the culture of an organization and helps you find, again, ties back to the motivation, and helps me find my voice and alignment with the values that I was looking for as part of my work. So it's specifically for the place that I'm working at, has been really helpful, and has constantly been motivating me to continue the work that I've been doing. Just in terms of pace, because it's very interesting. When I was moving from the nonprofit space to, say, again, large multilateral bank space, I think pace is the one thing that most people complain about because they're large institutions governed by governments, mandates. There's a lot of red tape that you have to go through to be able to make a simple investment. So I think it's very easy for people to get frustrated with the pace of it. But then you need to find alternate areas as part of your work which do provide you fulfillment, be it the investments that we're making, the growth that we see as part of the investment, the evaluation of the impact. Was it actually what we wanted it to be or not? And then sort of feeding it back into the learning loop. I think that journey itself is also fulfilling while we go on to scale and make more investments as part of a large institution.
I love that piece at the end where you were like, there's always opportunities to learn and grow. And it sounds like that process gives you, it sounds like it gives you energy. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's a great way to think about it. And then Christine will have the same question to you.
Yeah, please bear in mind that I was in capital markets over a decade ago. But when I interviewed for that role, and there were a few people from my school who also interviewed, and the template was clear afterwards. But so in one of the rounds of interviews, you're in the middle of the interview, and all of a sudden this lady starts yelling at you. Um, and I handled that quite well. I was yelled at as an athlete. I was yelled at a lot. And so that for me wasn't, and I was also not from a finance background, so I thought, okay, maybe I probably am wrong. Um, and they really wanted to see how you would react to that. What I didn't realize was that was a bellwether for what the culture on the trading floor is and what kind of behavior is accepted and expected. And so um, I got through that in flying colors. However, I don't thrive in that environment long term, and for me it was a very sexist experience as well. And so I didn't feel like I was able to show up without armor on. And when you spend, trading floors, it seems like it ends early, but it's because it starts so early. And then equity research, the hours are longer, more similar to investment banking, although I think less remuneration. Um, when you work in that environment for a really long part of your day, I felt weathered by it. And so that was not something that I ultimately enjoyed. A lot of my friends are still in it and thrive, are able to manage that culture. And it was funny because during the interview, I was like, I come from oil and gas, where that is also a very sexist industry. Um, Pace wise, it, the sell side of capital markets is much higher paced than the buy side of capital markets. The buy side was much slower, although the stresses are different. And bringing in money and things was sort of never ending. So I think you could have done it just as long or just as much. Um, and then with entrepreneurship, I actually feel I like high paced things, and I really like overachieving or achieving. And so with entrepreneurship, I think sometimes one of the things that's hard to remember, because you're doing it for yourself or because of a mission, it can be hard to take the foot off the gas ever. And it's very personal. You sort of become, you identify with your company more than I think is healthy. So pros and cons along the way, culturally, from a pace perspective, and definitely the only position I've ever had that I feel the impact is with Untangle Money. The rest, I really didn't feel like I was adding anything positive to the world. I felt a lot like I was pushing paper around and making noise for the sake of noise. Um, Maybe not so much on the buy side, but it still didn't feel as impactful as this does. So I think this is much more fulfilling, um, and it's a really nice place to have finally landed.
I could definitely see how your work with Untangle Money is a really great fit and kind of brings all of your skills together. And also know that the pace of being an entrepreneur is very, very high. And can empathize with you when you say, it's hard to know when to take off your foot off the gas. It really seems like it's been a good fit, which I'm thrilled to hear. We're going to go on to our next question. We'll head back to Drishti. How do you view the sustainability and longevity of careers in alternative finance compared to, this question is for traditional finance sectors, but we could say more broadly to kind of the different corporate experiences you've had.
No, I'm going to keep it very short actually, but I am learning quite a bit from the panelists as well. So I'm going to borrow what Christine said about the three pillars. And I think that's a great framework to look at any workplace or career as, in terms of, does it fit any three criteria that you have for your life beyond work? So like work, for sure, work and its fulfillment, does it really fulfill you? Or if that's something that you're looking for even at this stage in your career, and what part of your career requirements does it fill currently? But also beyond that, do you see people around you who are in senior positions or further along their life in this organization or in this sector, who are able to live their life fully? Are they able to uh, go and achieve outcomes that they had for themselves as people beyond just work and so on? So I think it's a great framework to have a look at, and in different organizations, how they allow for the space to be able to just go and be beyond who you are at work. For example, at BII, I think there's a fantastic program where after 3 years of working, you can take 6 months off to work. And it's not a sabbatical. Is a separate program, but you can take 6 months off to work at an issue which is important to you. And so if that's like an important model for you to take back, and help you keep showing up to work energized, then that really sort of works for the employees. But yeah, I'm gonna stop here and let others answer this question.
I think that program is really wonderful. Being able to work on something unique that's really special and important to you. I could definitely see how that would keep you energized as you're kind of moving through your day. But no, I think that's a great comment of harkening back to what Christine was mentioning about just kind of knowing what your values are, knowing what are your negotiables, what are your non-negotiables, and then just like comparing every opportunity or every project or whatever iteration to those to make sure that it's a good fit for you. I think it's a great thing to mention. Our next question, we're going to go to Ria. Ria, what strategies have you found effective for networking in kind of these non-traditional finance sectors? Were there specific communities, organizations, or more informal networks that helped you break in? And more importantly, how did you even know about them? How did you find them? How did you access them? We'd love to learn more.
Libby. So I think let me just start by saying that I think networking as a skill or art rather is not necessarily very specific to any industry. The same principles apply. Within the finance world, I think there are many roles that require a lot of specific domain knowledge, but there are also tons of roles that more importantly require you to have strategic planning skills and have a history of successful execution. And that is something that we all should be able to articulate whenever we are networking. And for me, I would say that I am somebody who knows what I don't like, but I don't necessarily know what I do like. And if unless you have very specific path in mind, I would encourage people early in their careers to be more flexible and try out different things. That way, you get to understand. What is it that you do like, and also what is it that you're actually good at, right? So it's not just that what you think you're good at might not actually play out. And to me, I would say that regardless of industry, have always relied on my MBA network more than anything else. Not just when I'm actually recruiting, but also when just catching up. Always inquiring about their day-to-day jobs and trying to understand what challenges they face, what is their long-term growth potential, and what is it that translates to in actual 9 to 5 or longer if you have others. And that I would say helps you chase the right opportunities in the first place, and you can you build that muscle as you go. Initially while you're experimenting, but then you keep building that muscle. And there is a theme of, you can major in something, but you can also, minor in a lot of things, and then keep building on that. So both work equally. And I would say more in a more structured uh, format, definitely there are professional groups. For example, I'm in payments, so there's a women in payments professional network that you can participate in. Before that, I was in anti-money laundering in Capital One, so that they have an ACAMS group as well. But all of those are typically sponsored by your employer. So that is also situational, I would say. There are also other avenues. For example, I took a certificate course from Wharton, which was fintech revolution, and I also got to build network from fellow participants from around the world. So that is also another avenue. And as I said, if you keep trying out different roles in different teams, even if in the same company, you can keep switching around. That automatically enriches your network, because your teammates then will go out and branch out and join different companies. So I think you constantly have to keep building connections, but more importantly, you constantly have to nurture them, and not just look at it as something that you do only when you're recruiting, which then keeps your muscle active, and you can find the right opportunities in time.
I love that. I love that last sentence that you said, which was you need to keep that muscle active. And so making sure that you're networking not just when you need to, but to make sure that you have those strong relationships is so key. And it's great to hear that, this network that you have from IU still continues to be such a support for you. And you're able to connect with them often, and make sure that you're continuing to be there for one another throughout your careers. So that makes me happy to hear. Next question, we're going to go to Catherine. Catherine, what advice would you give to MBA women who are kind of maybe a little bit hesitant or nervous to step away from the investment banking trajectory? How can they evaluate all these different paths, that we've talked about here today and beyond, with confidence? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll take that question in two parts. One is, if you're already in investment banking, how do you decide when to sort of get off of that path? And two is, how do you decide whether you should enter it at all? I think it depends a lot on your background. And for somebody like me, who I also did the Forte MBA prep and went to a conference, and it was really great. If you do not have a finance background, I continue to believe that it is the best and sometimes only way to get into sort of high finance jobs. And that would be, private credit, private equity, a number of other sort of roles. I think it's probably the best and only training to get in for some people. And if you, so if you're, a background similar to mine, I think you should prioritize it if you're sure that finance is what you want to do. If you have a relevant background already, I think that's where it's a little bit tough, and you should probably figure out where you want to go and have conversations in those roles, and even look at LinkedIn's of people in those roles to see what their backgrounds are, to see if it's required or not. I think I speak at Sloan occasionally on this as well, and I'll hear from somebody who's like, oh, I was at BCG for 4 years, or oh, I was at Bain for 4 years. In that case, I think you may not have to. And then it's really incumbent on you to do the networking and to figure out how to position yourself, through your MBA, through your experiences, through your internship, all that, to get the role you want. So I think that could be a little bit personal based on your experience. And then how do you decide when to leave when you're there? That's really hard. The reality is investment banking will always be something new and interesting. If you were there 100 years, you would learn something new every year. My husband was there 12 years, and his breadth and depth of knowledge is insane, having done so many deals. So I don't think you could ever, from a professional standpoint, be poorly served by being there. It's kind of like an MBA. There are certain points in your life and in your career where you are very flexible and have a lot of optionality. When you leave your MBA is one of those points. When you leave investment banking is one of those points. I think this is true for a number of jobs. It's also true for management consulting. So I think you have to be really thoughtful. It's a really, really hard job. And so you shouldn't go into it if you're not ready and willing for that physically, personally, kind of emotionally, all of those things. I did occasionally see people leave for a not great opportunity because it's a really hard environment. And I think that's a huge shame. I would not, under any circumstances, ever leave without another job lined up. And these weren't like, abuse or poor treatment cases. It was just hard hours. So I would say, my advice would be, short of major abuse or some kind of like big problem, I would never, never, never leave without another job lined up and for another opportunity that you didn't feel like was growing your network or your career, because you are kind of amortizing your experience when you leave.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you mentioning kind of the breadth and depth of knowledge that kind of the investment banking career can provide, and that's exciting. And I can imagine it would also be nerve-wracking as you're doing all these different things at the same time. But I appreciate your perspective, which is, if you're deciding to make that change, make it strategically and really think about kind of what that next step looks like, what you're looking for out of that next step, and know your value when you're going into those discussions and conversations. So I am looking at the time and I cannot believe we're almost at the end of our panel. So I'm going to actually finish up our conversation with a question. I'm skipping around a bit for our panelists. I'm going to have our last question go to Ria, actually. And so I'm sure everyone is, seeing in the news that, technology is just kind of reshaping everything under the sun. So Ria, would love to know your perspective on this. How do you see technology reshaping finance careers? And then what roles are gaining the most traction as a result? And then additionally, how should MBAs be preparing to stay competitive in this kind of ever-evolving landscape as new technology is being introduced quite often?
Thank you, Libby. So I think, as I mean, we all know technology is revolutionizing every aspect of our lives, and financial services in particular, I would say, powered by so much data and cloud computing technologies, they're transforming every monetary transaction we participate in, and each of that translates to a product or a service that you could be working or leading or building. Could it be real-time payments, open banking, uh, real-time lending, robo-wealth advisors, financial planning, real estate purchases, insurance, regulatory tech, to blockchain and altcoins or stable coins. Like all of these are powered through technology, and they are changing the way we make monetary transactions as consumers and as builders and people in finance who are leading them. So I guess that presents a tremendous opportunity. All you need to do is you definitely have to be good at analytics. You have to understand how technology works broadly, and you need to keep up to date with the latest consumer trends. And as I said, as consumers directly, it's much easier to do that than to keep up with trends in investment banking or corporate finance. Um, Another sector that I would say is gaining a lot of traction is embedded finance, and that essentially means non-traditional companies would offer financial products on their website, like hotels offering insurance or BNPL loans or something. And that I think is a unique nuance for MBA students, because then you can use your finance knowledge to switch to non-finance industry and be in that embedded finance team, or you could want to switch to finance roles and you could use your pre-MBA non-finance industry experience. So you can blend the two very easily and find roles in embedded finance and all of these new age financial products and services that are being launched every day. All you need to do is, I would say, be at the right place and right time, because honestly, there's so many things happening. You really don't know which one will pick up. So it's also an experimentation to some sort.
Thank you, Ria. I think your comments are a great way to end our. Again, I can't believe we're already at time. I really just looked at the clock to see where we were at, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're almost at 1:45 Eastern. So that's a perfect way to end things, with looking to the future and thinking about how we adjust and adapt. And I just want to take an opportunity to thank everyone here for being here today. I'm so sorry we didn't get a chance to get to questions, but I hope you learned a little bit more kind of about different opportunities in financial services. Obviously, we have some amazing folks here who have done some really exciting things with their careers, and I hope that their insights and perspectives can help you as you are kind of thinking through what your next step might be, or what you are wanting to do while you're in your MBA as well. So just to kind of kind of finish things off on our end, I do hope that this is one of many opportunities that you engage with Forte throughout the next several months. For those of you who this might be the first interaction with our group, we do have a series called Conquer Your Career, which is all about what it's like to be a woman in different industries and different functions. So in just a few weeks, I think it's just 2 weeks, we're going to be focusing on operations and supply chain management roles. So if that's of interest to you, we hope that you join us. But otherwise, just know that Forte is here to help you throughout your business school journey. Any questions that you have, feel free to get in touch with us. Otherwise, we hope to see you on another virtual event real soon. Thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you later. Bye y'all.